Have you ever noticed yourself repeating patterns in your life that you don't actually want? Maybe they're around relationships or money. Maybe they have to do with people pleasing or self-doubt. And even though you know that these patterns aren't helping you, there's something about them that feels strangely familiar. And that familiarity in itself is a clue. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that these patterns often don't start with us. And once we learn where they're coming from, we can become the cycle breaker. And we can put an end to these patterns, not only for ourselves, but for all of the generations around us. Over the past few years, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on the patterns in my own life. And in recent months, while I've been dealing with some health challenges, this has really come up a lot for me. Because once life throws you off track and you're suddenly not able to do what you normally can or be as productive as normal, it gives you time to sit back and look at these underlying patterns. And one of the patterns that has been coming up for me is this identity of being a hard worker and being independent and strong. I tend to push through pain and discomfort because I like to be the person who gets things done and I don't need to rely on anybody else to do it. And I started wondering how much of this is actually me and how much of it is something I learned, absorbed, or inherited from generations that came before me. I grew up in the Midwest, and if you know anything about Midwestern culture, you've probably heard that people in the Midwest have a really strong work ethic. And I know that definitely applies to me. So along with that stereotype of people in general, I also, from a very young age, I saw my dad working really long hours while he started his own business. So he would work nights and weekends, and he would do whatever it took to get things done. And even though he never told me that I had to do those things to be successful, my body still absorbed the knowledge. And it enforced this belief that my productivity is what equals my worth. And if I'm not being productive, then I'm not going to succeed. Every family carries patterns. Some of them are really beautiful things like resilience, strength, and loyalty. But other families pass down patterns that were developed around survival strategies. Maybe you had a grandparent who grew up in a time of scarcity, so they learned to always worry about money. Maybe emotions weren't talked about in your family, so people learned to stay quiet about their feelings. Maybe being strong and independent was necessary for their survival. And over time, those survival strategies become rules in your family. And those rules get passed down generation to generation, a lot of times unknowingly and unintentionally. And it's important to recognize that these patterns weren't wrong. They were survival strategies that helped your ancestors and your family line grow and thrive and survive. But the difference now is that we have the awareness to recognize if these patterns are helping us or hurting us. And the patterns that helped our families survive in the past may not be what help us thrive in the present. So that's when we start breaking these patterns. The patterns we inherit aren't just ideas or beliefs. They can live in our body and nervous system. When we're children, we learn emotional responses from our caregivers. Our nervous systems begin to mirror each other. And those stress responses get repeated, often without us even realizing it, generation after generation. If previous generations of your family lived on high alert all the time, or they didn't talk about their emotions, those patterns can get passed down in a quiet way that you don't even recognize. And they start shaping how people respond to stress without you even realizing it. There's actually been a lot of research around trauma and epigenetics that suggests how stress can influence future generations. So in other words, our bodies carry echoes of experiences that our ancestors went through long before we even existed. Now, some traditions say that when one person heals, it ripples out through multiple generations, both forward and backward. And that's something that I personally really resonate with. And I do believe that our healing has so much greater of an impact than we can even realize. Whether you look at it through a spiritual lens, an emotional lens, or even a lens from what we learn through science, the message is pretty much the same. And it's that healing doesn't just affect one person. When you start changing patterns in your own life, you're also shifting what gets carried forward in your family. The person who becomes aware of a pattern is often the person who begins to break it. A cycle breaker is someone who starts questioning the beliefs they inherited. Someone who chooses awareness over living on autopilot. And someone who allows them to feel all the emotions that their ancestors may not have been able to express. Being the cycle breaker doesn't mean that you're rejecting your ancestors or that you blame the generations who came before you. If anything, you're honoring everything they went through, but you're also recognizing that you have an opportunity to do things differently. Some examples of patterns that people begin to break include things like chronic self-criticism, people-pleasing, overworking, emotional shutdown, scarcity mindset. And when you change the way you respond to these patterns, you create new possibilities, not only for yourself, but for all the people who come after you. Recognizing these patterns is the first step, but it doesn't always release them. These beliefs are often stored very deep in the body, in the nervous system, and in your subconscious. And if you ever want to go deeper into exploring your subconscious and being able to release things on a much deeper level, I do offer transformational hypnosis sessions, and I would love to help you out. So I'll include my website link below, and you can reach out with any questions. But next week, I'm going to be sharing a guided meditation for ancestral healing. And it's a gentle way to connect back to your lineage, to honor what your previous ancestors have gone through, and to release any of these patterns that don't belong to you. It's not about rejecting your past. It's about creating a new future. Because I really want you to remember that the patterns you struggle with may not have started with you. They may have been shaped by generations of struggling and resilience and survival. But the moment you become aware of these patterns, you gain the power to change them. And that means the work that you do on yourself is so much more powerful than you think. The pattern may not have started with you, but the healing can. So think about your family. Are there any patterns coming to mind that you're aware of? feel free to drop a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed already, click the subscribe button so that you'll get a notification when that meditation is released next week. Thank you so much for being here with me, and I'll see you next time.